Diagnosed over the age of 50. What's that like? Well, that's what we're talking about today on Plus Talk. We're all about turning positive into a plus. Gary and his doctor, our friend Dr. Gary Blick, are joining me. Good to see you both, gents.
It's great to be here with you today.
Thank you.
You know, Gary, Dr. Gary, because I got the two Garys there, I was shocked. Well, not shocked, really. I mean, the CDC estimates that by 2030, 70% of people living with HIV will be older than 50. I guess that is a blessing and a curse, because it's a blessing that we're all living longer, but the curse is, and you and I have talked about this before, are we ready for that as far as what patient care looks like for people over the age of 50?
So first of all, we're at 53 to 54% already. So that's why we will be at 70%, like you said. And no, we're not ready for this at all, Carl. Yeah. And honestly, the health system is not ready for it. I don't think even healthcare workers like myself are aware of all the ramifications there are, all the comorbidities there may be once a person becomes HIV positive. So if we really want people to live a normal lifestyle, we have to address all the non-HIV related comorbidities that I'm sure we're going to be talking about today. So just cardiovascular disease, we always talked about that, you and I.
Yeah, we will get to that. Patient Gary, thank you very much for sitting down with us and sharing what you're about to share. Relatively newly diagnosed with HIV. When did you decide to go and get tested?
It really came about, it wasn't like I decided to get tested. I was changing doctors. My old doctor went concierge. I didn't want to do that. And I kept bugging a friend of mine, a dentist friend, like, who do you see? Who do you see? Refer me. And it was very difficult to get in to see Dr. Blick. And he kept bugging the office, and finally they took me in, and that's sort of just how it all started. So I had no clue.
The perk of having a rock star personal physician. Gary, I was reading...
It's just we don't like people over the age of 50. That's what it is, Carl. Being over 50 myself.
Are you really? Oh, well, that's breaking news. Patient Gary, I was reading in some bio notes on you that said you were driven and candid, and at times you may tell people things they don't want to hear. So what went through your mind when you recently found out, as a man over the 50, that you were HIV positive?
It was, oh God, how would I describe it? It was pretty disconcerting at first because I never even considered it. And it's not something I've yet really delved into other than discussing with my friend who referred me to Dr. Blick. So it's still really just kind of like new for me. I don't know how to really describe it right now.
Can I ask, at the time of we are doing this interview now, but how long has it been since your diagnosis to this point today?
Less than a year.
Less than a year. And it's interesting, you said, it wasn't something you were expecting. If I may be presumptuous here, you are a man of a certain age who has lived through the horrors of what this virus has done. Certainly HIV is on your radar.
It's never something that crossed my mind for me. I was married for 16 years. I was dealing the last 10 with a spouse battling cancer. And I, was going through a lot of stress, and it's sort of, those were the only things I would ever be treated for. And then I came down with a really bad case of eczema, which a dermatologist, diagnosed as eczema, and and my regular doctor wasn't looking anywhere else. And so they just kept saying everything was stress related, for various things that may have, come about. And so I just, never thought of it.
So again, sort of going back to that moment, your your test has come back positive. Just if you could walk me through that moment.
So that was probably, I didn't see you, I think, until October or November of last year. And so it must have been December, I think, and sitting in this office. And I kind of recall just being a little dumbfounded and shocked, but not. I mean, I knew it was always a possibility in the back of my head. Obviously, living the life I've lived my entire life, and
Right.
I'm over, I don't know the baddest, but I'm over 60, not over 50. So it's kind of like, so I just recall being kind of a bit in shock, if that makes sense.
That was the term I was thinking of. He was a little bit shell-shocked at the conversation. Matter of fact, I even had to try to take the conversation down a little bit because he didn't know what a viral load was, no less a T cell at that point. And Gary's initial viral load was 1.8 million. And his initial T cells were uncountable. That's how low they were. And so I didn't want to get into all of that because I knew the news was going to be devastating enough at that point. I eventually, during further visits, taught Gary about that. But even today, he's just grasping that, but we went over that again today.
And he actually thought that part of the reason I came to him specifically was because I thought that I was HIV positive, which had never even crossed my mind, quite honestly.
So, Gary, what sort of preconceived ideas did you have? Again, as someone of your age who lived through and witnessed firsthand the absolute devastation and horror that HIV inflicted on millions of people. But fast forward to, we live in this day and age where we have antiretrovirals, we have PrEP, we have all these, we have the science of U equals U. For all intents and purposes, we have the tools to end this thing, but sadly we haven't. What were your sort of thoughts and preconceived ideas on what it meant to be HIV positive in this day and age? And now here you are, an HIV positive person yourself.
Yeah, so I think that I would say, so obviously I lived through the 80s, and, no close friends, but obviously people dying around me. And I think that a big part of my existence after that was that I just sort of thought, I was much more promiscuous then. And so I just thought if I lived through that, it's kind of like everything's fine, everything's okay. And then I just never honestly really thought about it.
Dr. Blick, what does an HIV diagnosis look like for somebody of Gary's age or someone over the age of 50 or over the age of 60? Because, as we can see, it does happen. And I think actually, Gary, your comment then I just found really interesting because, yeah, you lived through the hell of it and came out unscathed the other side. So it's almost like, brushed that off, made it through that one, on with my life. But this is very real, isn't it, Dr. Blick?
Yeah. So from my point of view, it brings up a couple major issues. First of all, Gary, thinking he's in a relationship, he's healthy, got his own internal stigma about not getting tested and not asking for that, thinking that, under that misconception, hey, I'm healthy, I made it through all that bit, like you just said. But I go worse to the provider's point of view, okay? We externally stigmatize them by saying, oh, you've been in a 16-year-old married relationship. Oh, fine, you don't need to go get tested or anything like that. There's no reason for you to. You're not exposed. You're not doing anything. We made a misconception. I wonder if anybody ever asked, Gary, do you guys, are you monogamous in your relationship? Do you go outside your relationship? Did you get tested before you got into your relationship? None of those things ever got questioned of him. And even if he asked for a test, he would have been told, you're not at risk. It's not an issue for you. So that's where you mentioned, Karl, we have all the tools, right? But you can't use the tools because of stigma all over us that keeps that percentage of people from getting tested, not only getting tested, but if they test positive, staying on treatment. And if they're negative, getting on PrEP. That's our biggest issue today. And I think Gary has experienced that now firsthand. So what he was feeling inside, but also what was presented to him by his providers.
Yeah, and Gary, you mentioned that, it's been almost a year. How's the internalized stigma? Have you sort of picked up and sensed all of that to the point of what Dr. Blick is talking about, or that idea that somehow you've done something wrong, or somehow this is, And if you're facing that, or you face that, how have you sort of been processing that? Because I think it's helpful for other people to hear firsthand those experiences that those of us living with HIV have when it comes to that kind of thing.
Or what are others going to think about me?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, no, that constantly goes through my mind. And a big part of like what I've been dealing with in the last couple of months, because I'd been speaking to somebody very, very excessively. This has never been like something I've ever done before, on the phone and, and texting. But I'm not going to share anything, with somebody in that way. It would have to be face to face. And so I was like thinking, well, this would be the first person that I would actually tell and see what happened with that before I started telling family or friends or things like that. I've always been a really private person, so it's not like I grew up. I never came out, so I have a very interesting, youth. My family just always knew I was gay. My father's brother was gay, and my sister's gay, and I, all sorts of relatives that are gay. And in our families, it was just kind of, that's what it is. So I never had that, sort of thing, happen. And I just have grown up just, being a very, very private person. So I don't share a lot of personal things with me, which is why this was very hard when he first asked me if I would do this with you, because I don't share a lot about my, myself and my life, unless I'm, in a relationship or it's somebody that I care, deeply, about.
Well, and again, thank you for doing this.
Sure,
I'm curious as to why now and why do this then? Because you are sharing this. This is going on the internet, and this is going to be out there. And so those family and those friends are going to find out. How do you feel about all of that?
So I guess I feel that Gary is very important to my life now. And I sort of look at this as I'm, whether it's doing something to help him, to help you, to help other people, to help myself, I guess, because I have to start somewhere. And it's really scary because it took, I was away on a vacation when he asked me, and I was like, I really need to think about this, because it is a huge step, but I think it's the right step.
That's going to do it for part 1 of this conversation. Join us next week. We'll be back with part 2. Remember, you can like, follow, share. We're across all your favorite social platforms at +Life Media. And if you want more information, check out our website, pluslifemedia.com. Until next time, see you soon. Bye-bye.